Legislative member Chuck DeVore is here. Chuck, this is pretty wild. I mean, you don't have to be from California to realize that there's something at the very least extremely unusual about having a non-citizen voting on election procedures for the state.
Well, leave it to San Francisco. Look, I understand where they're coming from. If you live in the community, you ought to have say in the community where you pay taxes. The problem is that when you have someone from another nation, they owe allegiance to that nation. And in the case of the People's Republic of China, what we're really talking about effectively is owing allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party. And that is not a good thing if you want to mix it with our elections.
But we should mention, by the way, the woman is Kelly Wong. She came here as a student from Hong Kong back in 2019. She is a non-citizen, but just the idea of having a non-citizen voting on regulation procedures involving citizens, I mean, there just doesn't seem to be anything right about that.
Well, and as we know, in San Francisco and some of the areas around San Francisco, as well as in New York, there has been a push to allow people who are in America legally, although certainly you have to wonder how they would enforce it, given the lax enforcement when it comes to voter registration and validation of citizenship. Yeah. But the thought is, in some of these jurisdictions, to allow them to vote in non-federal elections. I think it sets up a nightmare. You have to keep two separate voting lists. Bad idea.
Yeah. Now, we should mention, of course, this sort of thing is happening all over in blue states all over the United States. New York has some problems in this regard as well, as does Illinois. So it doesn't have to be from California. But the problems in California do seem to a lot of folks to be uniquely unusual, shall we say. So much so that some permanent residents, a lot of them by the thousands, including some very famous people, are voting with their feet and moving out. And one of them is Sylvester Stallone. I think we showed that soundbite. Can we roll that again? Oh, no. OK, we're short on time, but our folks saw it in the tease. So you have Sly Stallone leaving. What does that tell you about what's happening with the state?
Well, certainly Stallone is just a high-profile example of what's been happening in California for the last several years. You see major corporate relocations out of state. You see billionaires and millionaires and common everyday people moving out of the state because the taxes are too high. Public safety is beginning to break down. And heaven help you if you want to run a small business. The regulatory thicket in California is out of control. We commissioned a study when I was in the legislature. It came back and suggested that at the time it cost the typical small business about $135,000 a year.
Wow.
Just to comply with California's myriad regulations. And if you don't comply, David, you go to jail.
Yeah, and all that falls so hard on particularly the smaller businesses. A lot of bigger ones can eat it, although not all of them either. Chuck, great to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Best of luck to California. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world. There's no doubt about it. Stay with us. More Kavod.